You can only trade with what's in your pocket. If you've got talent, talent is your currency. If you're holding kindness, kindness is what you'll spend. Nobody walks into the market with empty hands and expects to walk out with a full shopping bag. Willa Payne understood this better than anyone. She stood in her cramped kitchen on a cold October morning in 1882, staring at the last 3 silver dollars in her worn leather purse. Outside, the town of Cedar Ridge, Colorado, was waking up. Smoke curled from chimneys, a sign of life, of warmth. But inside her little house on Maple Street, death was in the air. It was coming from the corner bedroom, where her 8-year-old son, Corey, was burning with fever. 6 days. For 6 long days he'd been sick. It started as a cough, a simple little cough. Now it was a monster. Lung fever, Dr. Parker Long had called it. He'd come by 3 days ago, a grim look on his old, weathered face. He left a bottle of bitter medicine that cost Willa 2 weeks of her seamstress wages. As he left, he shook his gray head. "Keep him warm, keep him fed, and pray," the doctor had said. "If that fever doesn't break by the weekend, well, Mrs. Payne, you'd best make your peace with the Lord." Willa pressed her hand to her son's forehead. It felt like a hot coal. His breathing was a terrible sound, short, ragged gasps that tore at her soul with every single rise and fall of his little chest. His bright blue eyes, usually full of mischief, were glassy and lost. He was staring at something she couldn't see. "Mama," he whispered, his voice a ghost. "It hurts to breathe." She fought back the tears, smoothing his damp hair. "I know, sweetheart. Mama's going to make it better." But she had no idea how. The medicine was gone. The doctor had given up. And winter was coming, a hungry wolf sniffing at their door. Frost already painted the windows in the morning. Snow was dusting the high peak she could see from her kitchen. Soon, the mountain passes would be sealed shut. If Corey wasn't better by then. She couldn't finish the thought. Willa was 26 years old. She had buried a husband. She knew that surrender wasn't an option. It was a luxury for other people. There had to be another way. There just had to be. She looked at her pantry, a few potatoes, some dried beans, a sack of flour that wouldn't last the week. Her sewing machine stood silent in the corner. You can't take in mending when your son needs you every minute of the day. The neighbors were kind, of course. They brought soup. They offered prayers. But kindness doesn't buy medicine. Kindness doesn't put food on the table. Then came a knock at the door. It was Estelle Hammond, the banker's wife. She stood on the porch holding a covered dish, her face a perfect mask of sympathy. "How's the little one today?" she asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her dress was new, deep burgundy wool with pearl buttons. It probably cost more than Willa earned in 6 months. "He's fighting," Willa said, choosing her words carefully. Estelle meant well, but she was the town's chief gossip and moral judge. "Dr. Long stopped by the bank yesterday," Estelle said, placing her dish on the table. "He mentioned Corey's condition is quite serious." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "He also mentioned you haven't paid his bill yet." Heat rushed to Willa's cheeks. "I'll pay what I owe." "Of course, dear," Estelle said, her voice dripping with fake generosity. "It's just that winter's coming. A woman in your position, well, you need to be practical." "What do you mean?" "Stephen Glenn has been asking about you again," Estelle said with a knowing smile. "That fine house on Hill Street. A steady income from his dry goods store. He'd provide well for you and Corey. A woman can't be too proud when her child's life is at stake." Willa's jaw clenched. Stephen Glenn was 43. He'd buried 2 wives, and he looked at her like she was a piece of merchandise. "Mr. Glenn is a fine man," she said, "but I'm not interested in marriage." "Pride goes before a fall, Willa." "I'm too busy to be a wife," Willa snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. "Right now, all I can think about is keeping my son alive." Estelle's eyebrows shot up. "Well, I suppose that's your choice. She walked to the door, then stopped. Though I did hear something interesting at the post office yesterday. Miranda Buckley was telling everyone about that hermit up on Eagle Mountain. Apparently he has some kind of knowledge about healing. Willer's heart skipped a beat. What kind of knowledge? Oh, probably just nonsense, Estelle sniffed. But Miranda swears he saved her nephew from consumption last spring. Used some kind of old Indian remedies, she said. Estelle's face showed exactly what she thought of that. Of course, Miranda also believes in ghosts. After Estelle left, Willer stood at the window, staring up at Eagle Mountain. It rose 3,000 feet above the valley, a dark giant of pine and aspen. Somewhere up there lived a man the town only whispered about, River Barton. Some said he was a soldier once. Others said he was part Indian, that he'd learned healing from his grandmother before vanishing into the mountains 5 years ago. Most folks thought he was dangerous, maybe crazy. Parents used his name to scare their children. Behave, or the mountain man will get you. But Miranda Buckley's nephew was alive. He was working in his father's blacksmith shop, strong and healthy, and Dr. Long, with all his books and his education, had given up on her son. You can only trade with what's in your pocket. Willer looked at her $3 silver. Then she looked at Corey's burning face. Money wasn't going to be enough for a man who lived apart from the world. But she had other things. She could cook. She could clean. She could work harder than any woman in Cedar Ridge. If this River Barton had the power to save her son, she would trade whatever she had to give. The next morning, the first real snow began to fall. Willer wrapped Corey in every blanket they owned and loaded him onto their old mule, Jace. She packed the little food they had, her sewing kit, and started up the trail toward Eagle Mountain. The climb was hell. The path started out gentle, but soon it became a steep, rocky nightmare that twisted through the dark forest. The snow fell harder, hiding the trail, making every step a gamble. Jace struggled, his breath coming in ragged clouds. By midday, Corey was unconscious. His breathing was so shallow, she had to put her ear to his chest just to make sure he was still alive. Her own strength was fading. The cold was a physical thing, clawing its way through her coat. "We have to keep going," she whispered, more to herself than to the mule. The trail vanished completely in the afternoon, buried under a foot of fresh snow. Willer got off the mule and led him, breaking a path with her own boots, praying she was going the right way. Her legs were on fire. Her hands were numb. Behind her, Corey made small, pained sounds in his fever dream. Despair was starting to set in. She was lost. Her son was dying. They were going to die up here. And then she saw it. Smoke. A thin gray ribbon rising through the trees ahead. A sign of warmth. A sign of shelter. A sign of hope. She pushed forward, half running, half stumbling through the snow, dragging the mule behind her. The cabin appeared so suddenly it was like a magic trick. It was built of massive logs, squatting against the mountainside as if it had grown right out of the rock. Smoke curled from a stone chimney. Golden light glowed in the windows. She hesitated at the edge of the clearing. What if the stories were wrong? What if River Barton was a monster? What if he turned them away, leaving them to freeze to death in the snow? But then Corey moaned, a sound that ripped through her doubts. She carried him up the porch steps and pounded on the heavy wooden door. She heard footsteps inside, slow and cautious. The door creaked open just a few inches. She saw a slice of a man's face. Dark eyes, weathered skin, a jaw covered in a black beard. "Who are you?" His voice was deep, tired, but not mean. "What do you want?" "My name is Willer Payne," she said through chattering teeth. "This is my son, Corey. He's dying. I heard you might be able to help." The door opened wider. The man was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders. His dark hair was pulled back with a leather cord. He wore a simple wool shirt and dark trousers. But it was his eyes that got her. They were intelligent, assessing, and they held a flicker of something she hadn't expected. Compassion. "River Barton?" she asked. He nodded once. "Let me see the boy." He stepped forward and gently, so gently, took Corey from her arms. The child looked so small, so fragile against the man's massive chest. River carried him inside, and Willer followed, her heart pounding. The inside of the cabin was not what she expected, at all. She'd imagined a dirty, primitive shack. Instead, she was in a large, clean room with a roaring stone fireplace. There was comfortable furniture, and shelves packed with books. The floors were swept, the windows were clean. This wasn't the den of a wild hermit. This was the home of an educated man. River laid Corey on a leather sofa near the fire and started his examination. His hands were skilled, confident. He checked the boy's pulse, his breathing, the color of his skin. He gently lifted Corey's eyelids and pressed his ear to the boy's chest. "How long has he been like this?" he asked, not looking up. 6 days. The doctor in town said it was lung fever. He gave him medicine, but it didn't work. "Parker Long is a good man," River said, "but his knowledge ends where his medical books from 20 years ago end." He straightened up and finally looked at her. "Your son has pneumonia. It's serious, but it's not hopeless." Relief washed over her so powerfully she almost fainted. "You can help him?" "Maybe," he said, "but it won't be easy, and it won't be quick. He'll need constant care for at least a week, maybe 2. My methods aren't what you're used to." He studied her face, his dark eyes seeming to look right through her. "The question is," he said, his voice level, "what are you prepared to pay?" This was it, the negotiation. She straightened her shoulders. "I have $3 silver, some sewing supplies, and I can work. I can cook, clean, mend. I know you live alone. I can earn my keep." River was silent for a long, long time. His face was unreadable. Finally, he spoke. 1 month. "I'm sorry?" 1 month of your service," he said. "Cooking, cleaning, whatever needs to be done. In exchange, I'll treat your son. I'll give you both a place to stay until he's well enough to travel." His expression hardened. "But you need to understand. This mountain is a dangerous place in winter. If you agree to this, you stay. You stay until spring if you have to. There's no changing your mind." A month of her life, trapped on a mountain with a man she didn't know. But then she looked at Corey, so pale and still by the fire. It wasn't a choice. It was a lifeline. "I agree." River nodded and immediately turned into a different person. He moved with a purpose that was stunning to watch. He went to a cabinet and pulled out an ancient-looking leather bag. Inside were small cloth pouches of dried plants and strange-looking instruments. "First, we break the fever and help him breathe," he said, setting a pot of water on the stove. "Then, we attack the infection." He opened a pouch and sprinkled dried leaves into the steaming water. The cabin filled with a sharp, clean smell, like a pine forest after a storm. "What is that?" she asked. "Willow bark, wild cherry. An old recipe from my grandmother," he said, his hands never stopping. "She taught me that for every sickness, the earth provides a cure. You just have to know where to look." He built up the fire until the room was almost unbearably hot. He lifted Corey and set him near the steaming pot, draping a blanket over the boy's head to create a small tent. "The steam will open his lungs," River explained. "We'll do this every few hours, day and night." For the rest of the day and into the night, Willer watched him work. He was incredible. He moved from the steam therapy to gently massaging Corey's chest. He brewed teas from different herbs, carefully tipping a few drops between the boy's lips. He never seemed rushed. He never seemed unsure. "Were you a doctor?" she asked during a quiet moment. He shook his head. "A soldier. But my grandmother was a healer. She taught me what she knew." He adjusted the blanket around Corey, Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. That night, Willer lay on the sofa, listening to River care for her son. She heard him moving around every hour, making fresh steam, checking the boy's temperature, whispering low, soothing words. This man, this dangerous hermit the town was so afraid of, was showing her child more kindness than anyone had since her husband died. She must have fallen asleep, because the next thing she knew, River was gently shaking her shoulder. "Mrs. Payne, wake up." The cabin was dark. Only the embers in the fireplace were glowing. "What's wrong? Is it Corey?" "His fever broke an hour ago," River said. "He's asking for you." Willer flew to the bedroom. Corey was propped up on pillows. His eyes were clear. He was pale and thin, but he was awake. He was himself again. "Mama," he said, his voice weak but real. "I'm hungry." The relief was a physical blow. Willer sank into a chair and just cried. River quietly left the room, returning a moment later with a cup of warm broth. "Just a few sips at first," he instructed. As Corey slowly ate, the color started to return to his cheeks. He looked around the room, asking questions about the cabin, about River. For the first time in a week, Willer heard her son's voice, not the ghost of it. As he drifted off to sleep, he whispered, "Will you thank Mr. River for making me better?" "Mr. Barton," she corrected gently. "Yes, sweetheart, I will." But when she went back to the main room, River was cleaning his instruments by the lamplight, his face carefully blank. "I don't know how to thank you," she began. "No thanks are needed," he said, not looking up. "We made a bargain. Your son is through the worst of it, but he'll need a few more days of care. You can start earning your keep in the morning." His business-like tone was like a slap, but she reminded herself of the deal. She wasn't a guest. She was an employee. "What would you like me to do first?" "Breakfast," he said. "I eat at sunrise." He finally met her eyes. "And Mrs. Payne, the boy calls me River. You can too." The next morning, she woke to find River already gone. Corey was sitting up in bed, looking 100 times better. She explored the kitchen and found it was surprisingly well stocked. Flour, beans, salted pork, dried fruit. This man was more prepared for winter than anyone in town. She had biscuits and bacon ready when he returned from checking his trap lines. He was carrying 2 rabbits, a pleased look on his face. "Smells good," he said, hanging his coat by the door. "It's been a while since I had a proper breakfast." Breakfast was nice. It was comfortable. River listened patiently as Corey chattered away, asking a million questions about the mountain, about the animal tracks in the snow, about setting traps. "Your son is a curious one," River said, after Corey had eaten and fallen back asleep. "His father was the same way," Willer said, a catch in her voice. "Thomas would have liked you." "How long has he been gone?" River asked. 3 years this Christmas. Pneumonia, ironically enough. Dr. Long did what he could, but... She shrugged, the old pain still sharp. "I'm sorry for your loss," River said. And the way he said it, the simple sincerity in his voice, surprised her. It wasn't just polite words. It was real. They fell into a routine. River would leave at dawn. Willer would cook, clean, and take care of Corey, who got stronger every single day. The evenings were the best part. After supper, they would sit by the fire. River would carve little wooden animals for Corey, or work on beautiful, intricate pieces of furniture. His hands were magic with a piece of wood. "Where did you learn to do that?" she asked one evening. "The army at first. Then just trial and error up here," he said, holding up a chair back he was carving with delicate leaves. "Long winters and no company, you find ways to keep busy. It's beautiful. You could sell this in town." His face closed up. "I don't go to town," he said flatly. "Not for 5 years." She wanted to ask why, but his tone told her not to. Still, she was getting more and more curious about this man. He was educated. He had more books than the town library. He was a skilled craftsman and a healer who could do things the town doctor couldn't. So why was he hiding up here? She started noticing little changes in him, too. He lingered longer over breakfast. He told Corey stories about his own childhood, and sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking, she would catch him watching her, an unreadable expression in his dark eyes. On the 5th day, she found out why. River was outside splitting wood, and Corey was napping. Willer was dusting the bookshelf when she saw it. A small wooden box, tucked away behind 2 thick books. Curiosity got the better of her. She opened it, and her world tilted on its axis. Inside was a collection of small things, a blue hair ribbon she remembered losing months ago, a handkerchief she'd dropped outside the general store, a pressed wildflower, and at the bottom a piece of paper. On it, her name was written over and over again in careful, practiced script. Willer, Willer, Willer. The truth hit her like a physical blow. River Barton hadn't just helped a stranger, he had been watching her, thinking about her, maybe even caring about her from a distance for God knows how long. She slammed the box shut, her hands shaking. This wasn't just a random act of kindness, this was something else entirely. This quiet, mysterious man who lived apart from the world had been a secret part of hers all along. That evening, she couldn't stop looking at him. He was handsome in a rugged, quiet way, but more than that, he had a gentleness about him, a competence that made her feel safe for the first time in years. "Something wrong?" he asked, catching her staring. "No, I was just thinking how grateful I am." "You don't need to be grateful," he said, setting down his carving. "We have an arrangement." "It's more than that, though, isn't it?" The words just tumbled out. His eyes met hers across the firelight. For a second, she saw the walls around him start to crumble. But then Corey stirred in his sleep, and the moment was broken. River looked away. "You should get some rest," he said quietly. "Morning comes early on the mountain." But Willer lay awake for hours, thinking about that box, about pressed flowers and practiced handwriting, and she wondered what other secrets River Barton was hiding. By the end of the week, Corey was almost completely recovered. River started teaching him how to identify different kinds of wood, how to feel the grain, how to judge its strength. "This is white oak," River would say, holding up a piece of lumber. "Tight grain, makes it strong, good for things that need to last." Willer would watch them from her chair by the fire, mending one of River's shirts, a small smile on her face. Her son had been without a father figure for so long, and River seemed to genuinely enjoy teaching him. The cabin was starting to feel more like a home than her little house in town ever had. There were no gossiping neighbors, no judgmental looks. Just the quiet rhythm of the mountain, of honest work and peaceful evenings. And River, she was discovering, was a fascinating man. He'd traveled, he'd read, he had opinions on everything from politics to poetry. "You said you don't go to town," she ventured one evening after Corey was asleep. "Can I ask why?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he put down his carving. "Let's just say I had a disagreement with the law a few years back," he said, his eyes on the fire. "It seemed better for everyone if I just removed myself." A chill went down her spine. What kind of disagreement? He finally looked at her. The kind where a man ends up dead, and the law doesn't much care why. The words hung in the air between them. You killed someone?" "I stopped someone from being killed," he corrected her, his voice flat. "The man I stopped just happened to die. The person I saved was a woman who couldn't afford to buy justice. The man I killed was rich enough that his family already owned it. Simple as that." And despite the shock, she believed him. Everything about this man screamed protector, not predator. "So you came up here." "Seemed like the healthiest choice," he said. They sat in silence after that, but her mind was spinning. River Barton was an exile, maybe even a fugitive. And the strange part was, That didn't scare her half as much as it should have. The next morning, their quiet world was shattered. River was getting ready to leave, but he wasn't wearing his usual hunting clothes. He was in a clean shirt, his face etched with worry. "I have to go down to Miller's trading post," he said. "We're low on a few things I can't get up here. Winter's coming fast." Miller's was a day's ride away, close enough to civilization to make him nervous. "We'll be fine," she assured him. "Corey is better. I can handle things." "It's not that," he said, running a hand through his hair. "If anyone from town comes asking—" "They won't," she said confidently. She was wrong. He'd been gone less than 3 hours when she heard the horses. She looked out the window and her stomach plummeted. 3 riders: Sheriff Case Bryant, Mayor Austin Klein, and Pastor Ricky Duran. The 3 most powerful men in Cedar Ridge, and they did not look happy. "Corey," she said quietly, "go to the bedroom. Don't come out until I say so." The men dismounted and strode onto the porch like they owned the place. "Mrs. Payne," the sheriff said when she opened the door. His eyes were like chips of ice. "We need to talk." "About what, Sheriff?" "About you being up here alone with that hermit," Pastor Duran boomed, his face red with righteousness. "About the scandal you're bringing on this town. We've come to take you home." Willer's temper flared. "My son was dying. River Barton saved his life when your town doctor gave up." "That may be," the mayor said smoothly, ever the politician. "But the appearance of impropriety, my dear, is a powerful thing. A respectable widow does not live in isolation with an unmarried man. My reputation is my own business. Not when it reflects on the community," the pastor insisted. "I have standards to uphold." The sheriff peered into the cabin. "Where is he? Barton?" "He's away," she said carefully. The 3 men exchanged a look. "Perfect," the sheriff said. "Pack your things. You're leaving. Now." "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "My son isn't fully recovered and I have a debt to repay." "Your obligation," the mayor said, his voice laced with contempt, "is to behave like a proper Christian woman. Stefan Glenn has made you an honorable offer of marriage. You should accept it. Then this whole unfortunate business can be forgotten." That did it. The sheer arrogance of it. "I told Mr. Glenn I wasn't interested." "Pride, Mrs. Payne," the pastor said, shaking his head sadly. "Think of your son. What kind of future will he have with a fallen woman for a mother?" "I have not fallen." "Living in sin with a dangerous man?" The sheriff's voice turned hard as stone. "That's exactly what you are. And if you won't come with us willingly, I have the authority to remove you for your own protection." She realized then that they had already judged her. Her reasons didn't matter. Her son's life didn't matter. All that mattered was their town's pristine reputation. "You have no authority here," she said. "This is federal land." "Don't you try to play lawyer with us, woman," the sheriff snapped. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. "A man was murdered in Denver, and we have reason to believe your friend River Barton was the one who did it. That gives me all the authority I need." Murdered. The word hit her like a punch to the gut. River had told her someone died, but he hadn't said murdered. Had he lied? The mayor saw the shock on her face and pressed his advantage. "You didn't know, did you? The man you've been sheltering, cooking for, sleeping under the same roof with. He's wanted for killing Judge Weston McDaniel's son, caved his skull in with a piece of firewood." The details were horrific, designed to paint River as a monster, but her mind flashed to the gentle way he'd cared for Corey, the patient way he taught him to carve, the books that lined his shelves. This wasn't the story of a cold-blooded killer. "I don't believe you," she said. "Believe what you want," the sheriff said, "but you're coming with us." "Mama?" Corey's voice. He was standing in the doorway, his small face pale with fear. Are these men taking us away from River? Seeing him there, still so fragile, gave her a spine of steel. No, sweetheart. They're not. She stepped outside, facing the 3 men down. River Barton saved my son. He has shown us nothing but kindness. I don't care about your rumors or your threats. I am not leaving. Then you're choosing to destroy yourself, the pastor said. I'm choosing to honor my debts, she shot back. You have 1 week, the mayor snarled, his politician's mask finally slipping. 1 week to come to your senses, or you will face the consequences. They mounted their horses and rode off, leaving Willer shaking with a mixture of fear and fury. She had just declared war on her entire world. When River returned that evening, he knew instantly something was wrong. She told him everything. The visit, the threats, the accusation. They know about Denver, she finished. His hand stilled on the supplies he was unpacking. What exactly did they tell you? That you're wanted for murdering Judge McDaniel's son, that you beat him to death with a piece of firewood. A bitter, humorless laugh escaped his lips. Close enough, I suppose. He turned to face her. Carl McDaniel was beating a woman half to death in an alley. I pulled him off her. He came at me with a knife. I defended myself with the first thing I could grab. The woman, she ran before the law showed up. Smart girl. Carl's father owned the whole damn town. No one was going to believe a saloon girl over a McDaniel. It was the story he'd told her before, but now it had names, details, a cold, hard reality. They said it was murder. Self-defense becomes murder when the dead man's father is the judge, he said, his voice grim. Justice is for sale, Willer, and I didn't have the money to buy it. Before she could say anything, Corey appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. River, you're back. The change in River's face was instant. The hardness vanished, replaced by a genuine warmth. I might have found something for you, he said, pulling a small, carved wooden whistle from his pack. Corey's eyes lit up. Later that night, after Corey was asleep, clutching his new whistle, they sat by the fire. What will you do? She asked. If they come back with a warrant? Run, he said, staring into the flames. Further into the mountains, maybe Canada. I always knew this day might come. He looked at her, and she saw a raw desperation in his eyes she'd never seen before. And leave us behind? The question hung between them. He took a deep breath. Would you come with me? The question was so much more than just words. It was an entire future, hanging on her answer. She thought of her small, safe life in town. Then she thought of the past weeks, of Corey's laughter, of the way River's eyes crinkled when he smiled, of feeling truly alive for the first time in years. I'm too busy to be a wife, she said softly, echoing the words she'd thrown at Estelle Hammond. But I might have time to be a partner. His sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room. Willer, he whispered. We're not exactly conventional people, are we? She said, a small smile playing on her lips. Me with my stubbornness, you with your grandmother's medicine bag. She met his gaze. Maybe conventional isn't what we need. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. It was warm and calloused and strong. The town will call you a fallen woman, he said. Let them, she replied, squeezing his hand. I'd rather fall toward something real than stay standing for something hollow. Besides, she added, Corey likes you better than Stephen Glenn. A real laugh escaped him then, deep and genuine. High praise, though I did save his life and give him a whistle. It's hard to compete with that. The next few days were peaceful on the surface, but there was a tension underneath. River stayed close to the cabin, his eyes often scanning the valley below. You're expecting them, she said one morning over coffee. He nodded. Sheriff Bryant doesn't make empty threats. He said a week. He meant it. And you think he'll come back with more than just the mayor and the pastor? I think he'll come back with a federal marshal, River said, his jaw tight. And a warrant. Just then, Corey, who'd been practicing his whistle, looked up. Are the bad men going to take you away, River? Not if I can help it, son, River said. The easy endearment, son, made Willer's heart ache. Whatever happened, she couldn't let them be separated. That afternoon she made the discovery that changed everything. She was dusting the bookshelf again. This time she wasn't just curious, she was looking for something, anything that might help. Her hand brushed against that same small wooden box. It fell to the floor, the lid popping open, scattering the contents, the ribbon, the handkerchief, the flower, but this time she saw what was underneath them, a leather-bound journal. She knew she shouldn't. She knew it was a violation of his privacy, but she couldn't stop herself. She opened it, and she fell head first into River Barton's secret heart. The entries went back almost 2 years. October 15th, 1881, saw the Payne widow in town, carrying heavy bundles, looked tired, left some firewood by her back door after dark. Hope she doesn't think it's strange. November 3rd, 1881. The Payne boy was coughing in church. Left some willow bark tea on their porch, said it was from a neighbor. She'll think it's Mrs. Bartlett. December 20th, 1881. Christmas is hard for widows, hunted extra. Left a dressed rabbit by their kitchen door. The boy needs more meat on his bones. Page after page, it was all there. 2 years of secret acts of kindness. Firewood in the cold. Food when she was struggling. A repaired porch step she'd thought was a miracle. All of it was him. This dangerous hermit was the kindest neighbor she'd ever had. But it was the personal entries that broke her heart. January 14th, 1882. Watched her walking to church. She wore a blue dress, beautiful as spring water. If I were a different man. But there's no point in wishing. June 15th, 1882. Heard Stefan Glenn is courting her. The thought makes me sick. He would treat her like property. But what right do I have to object? I am nothing to her. The journal slipped from her fingers. He hadn't just been watching her. He had been protecting her. He had been loving her, from the shadows, silently, without ever asking for a single thing in return. Find something interesting? Willer spun around. River was standing in the doorway, his face impossible to read. His private thoughts were scattered all over the floor. I'm sorry, she stammered. The box fell. I shouldn't have read it. He walked into the room and calmly began to pick up the scattered items. It's all right. I suppose you were bound to find out. River, I had no idea. All those times. The firewood, the food. It was you. He nodded, not looking at her. You were struggling. I had more than I needed. But why? You didn't even know me. He paused, a pressed flower held between his rough fingers. I knew enough, he said softly. I knew you were kind. I knew you worked hard. I knew you loved your son more than life itself. He finally met her eyes, and his were full of a raw, aching vulnerability. And I knew you deserved better. Tears welled in her eyes. You wrote that you loved me. Still do, he said, simple as that, not expecting anything from it, just stating a fact. She stared at this man, this magnificent, selfless, foolish man. You magnificent fool, she whispered. He raised an eyebrow. I beg your pardon? She didn't answer with words. She closed the distance between them and kissed him. It started as a gentle thank you, but the moment their lips touched, years of pent-up longing exploded. He dropped the box, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her into a kiss that was desperate and deep, and everything she hadn't known she was missing. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. Well, he said, his voice shaky, that was unexpected. Good unexpected? Definitely good, he said, cupping her face in his hands. But Willer, you have to understand what this means. If you choose me, there's no going back. The town will never accept you. Good, she said fiercely. I'm tired of their acceptance. I want something real. A crash from the bedroom made them both jump. Corey was awake. They broke apart, laughing, a little embarrassed. But as Willer went to check on her son, her mind was made up. She was in love with a wanted man, and for the first time in a very long time, she didn't give a damn what anyone else thought about it. That evening, the unspoken decision hung in the air between them. Corey was carving a piece of wood, his tongue sticking out in concentration as River guided his small hands. Watching them, Willer's heart felt like it would burst with both love and fear. This was the life she wanted. But could she be brave enough to claim it? "River," she said, "if they come back with a warrant, what will really happen?" He sighed. "They'll arrest me, take me to Denver, and Judge McDaniel will make sure I hang. But what if the woman you saved came forward?" "She won't," he said, his voice flat. "It's been 5 years. She's probably got a new life, a respectable life. She's not going to risk it all to defend a fugitive." Corey looked up, his face clouded with confusion. "What's a fugitive?" "Someone who's running from trouble, sweetheart," Willer explained. "Are you in trouble, River?" the boy asked. River met his eyes. "Some people think I am, son." "But you saved me," Corey said, his logic simple and pure. "And you're teaching me to carve. And you make Mama smile. Good people aren't in trouble." Later that night, after Corey was asleep, she found River on the porch, staring up at the stars. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside him. "Regrets?" she asked softly. "About Denver? No, I'd do it again," he said. "About dragging you into this? Every single day. You didn't drag me anywhere. I climbed this mountain on my own. To save your son, not to get tangled up with an outlaw." She took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what you said, about not being able to go back. And I realized I don't want to go back. That life was safe, but it was suffocating me. They'll brand you a fallen woman, Willer. I'm too busy to be a wife to Stephen Glenn," she said, a small, sad smile on her face. "But I might have time to be your wife, if you'll have me." He stared at her, his face a mask of shock. Are you proposing to me, Mrs. Payne?" "I suppose I am," she said, her cheeks flushing. He didn't answer. He just leaned in and kissed her, a kiss that tasted of coffee and promises and forever. "Is that a yes?" she whispered when they broke apart. "That's a yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But Willer, I can't give you a church wedding or a house in town. All I have is this cabin, this mountain, and my heart." "That's more than enough," she said. "But I have one condition. Anything. I want Corey to be there. He's been through all of this with us. He should be our witness." River's smile was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "I'd like that too." They were married the very next evening by the light of the fire, with an 8-year-old boy as their only witness. River gave her a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother. "Do you, River Barton, promise to love and protect Mama and me forever?" Corey asked, his face serious. "I do, son," River said. "Do you, Mama, promise to love River and make him not be lonely anymore?" "I do, sweetheart," she said, laughing through her tears. "Then you're married," Corey declared. "You can kiss now, but not too gross." They shared a kiss, sealing their small, defiant family together against the world, and that's when they heard the horses. River was on his feet in an instant, his body tense. He peered through the window. 6 riders, he said, his voice low. Sheriff Bryant, and a territorial marshal. The warrant. They were here. "Take Corey to the back room," River ordered. "No," she said, moving to stand beside him. "I won't hide while they arrest my husband." The word felt new and powerful on her tongue. "We face this together." Before he could argue, a fist hammered on the door. "River Barton, this is U.S. Marshal Rory Graham. Open up." River gave her one last, long look, then opened the door. The marshal was a tall, serious-looking man. Behind him, Sheriff Bryant looked smug. "River Barton," the marshal said, holding up a piece of paper. "You're under arrest for the murder of Carl McDaniel. And Mrs. Payne," the sheriff added, "you'll be coming back to town with us. This shameful situation is over." "It's Mrs. Barton," Willer corrected him, her voice ringing with defiance. "And I'm not going anywhere." A shocked silence fell over the group. "You married this criminal?" the sheriff sputtered. "I married the man who saved my son's life," she said. "A man who has shown me more kindness than any of the so-called respectable men of your town." "Enough," the marshal said, holding up a hand. "Barton, are you coming peacefully?" River looked from the armed men to Willer's determined face, and then to Corey, who was peeking out from the bedroom. He sighed. "I'll come peacefully, but I want to say goodbye to my family." The marshal nodded. 5 minutes. River knelt and hugged Corey tightly. "Remember what I taught you," he whispered. "Take care of your mama." Then he stood and kissed Willer, a desperate, tender kiss that poured 5 years of silent love into one single moment. "I'll be back," he promised. "I know," she whispered back. The marshal stepped forward with the handcuffs, but just as he was about to snap them on, they heard more hoofbeats. 2 more riders were coming up the trail fast. Everyone turned. It was Dr. Parker Long, and with him was a woman, a well-dressed, respectable-looking woman with tired, haunted eyes. "Hold on a minute, Marshal," Dr. Long called out as he dismounted. "Before you take that man anywhere, you need to hear what Blair Galindo has to say." The woman stepped into the light. "Who are you, ma'am?" the marshal asked. "My name is Blair Galindo," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I live in Colorado Springs now. I'm married, with 2 children. But 5 years ago, I worked in a saloon in Denver." Sheriff Bryant started to protest, but the marshal silenced him with a look. "On the night of September 15th, 1877, the woman continued, "Carl McDaniel cornered me in the alley behind the saloon. He was drunk, he was angry, and he started to beat me. He said he was going to kill me." She took a deep, shuddering breath. "And then this man," she said, pointing a trembling finger at River. "He appeared out of nowhere. He pulled Carl off me. Carl came at him with a knife. Mr. Barton was just defending himself. He was defending me. He saved my life." The clearing was dead silent. "Why are you only coming forward now, Mrs. Galindo?" the marshal asked gently. "Because I was a nobody," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "A saloon girl. Who would have believed me? And because I was scared. But Dr. Long found me. He's been investigating this on his own for months. When he told me an innocent man was about to hang for saving my life, I couldn't stay silent any longer." Dr. Long stepped forward. "Marshal, I've found 3 other witnesses. All of them will testify that Carl McDaniel was a violent drunk and that River Barton acted in self-defense." The marshal looked from the warrant in his hand to River, then to the 2 women standing beside him. "This," he said slowly, "changes things considerably." "It's a lie!" Sheriff Bryant roared. "His son was a violent bully who finally picked the wrong victim," Dr. Long shot back. "And there are records to prove it, Marshal. Hospital records of other women he beat." The marshal took off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. He looked at River. "Mr. Barton, it appears there are some serious questions about these charges. I'm recommending this warrant be withdrawn, pending a full investigation." He then turned to the furious sheriff. "And Sheriff, I suggest you focus on the actual criminals in your jurisdiction instead of harassing innocent families." With a tip of his hat to Willer and River, the marshal and his men left, taking Dr. Long and a tearful but resolute Blair Galindo with them to file their official statements. The case was officially closed 9 months later. Judge McDaniel was removed from the bench, facing charges of corruption. The territorial governor issued a full pardon to River Barton. But by then, their lives had already changed. Word of River's skills, both as a healer and a woodworker, spread through the valley. People started making the climb up Eagle Mountain. First for medicine, then for the beautiful furniture River crafted. The town that had once scorned them now relied on them. One warm spring morning, River looked down the trail. Looks like we've got company again. It was a wagon train of women from the town, led by Estelle Hammond, carrying baskets of gifts. Their daughter, Hope, had been born in March, and the town had come to celebrate. "Willer," Estelle called out, her face free of judgment for the first time. "Pastor Duran would like to know if we could hold services up here on Sundays, for the folks who can't make it down to town." The cabin that was once a lonely refuge was now the heart of a community. That evening, after everyone had left, River and Willer sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Hope was asleep in her cradle inside. Corey was practicing a new song on his whistle. "Regrets?" River asked, echoing her question from all those months ago. Willer thought about her old life, the small, safe, gray world she used to live in. Then she looked at the vibrant, loving world she had now. "Not a single one," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Though I do have a confession." "What's that?" "I lied that first night," she said. "When I told you I was too busy to be a wife. I was never too busy. I was just waiting for the right man to make it worthwhile." His arm tightened around her. She had climbed that mountain with nothing but $3 silver and a dying son. She expected to bargain with a monster. Instead, she had found a home. She had found a family. She had found a love that was stronger than any mountain. If you enjoyed this story, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next strange, dark, and mysterious tale we have for you.